This is David Dubal, and tonight we're going to have, again, some piano music that is not generally known. Richard Strauss piano music, John Field, a Chopin Polonaise, not the A-flat, mercifully, a prelude and fugue by Mendelssohn, a couple of Bach inventions, and a piece by Carl Maria von Weber. Well, everyone is making a big deal about Franz Liszt, and to me you cannot make a big enough deal. However, in 1786 there was also the birth of one of the germinators of Romanticism and one of the most wonderful transition composers of his day, his name Carl Maria von Weber. Now Weber then, being born in 1786, would be how old, Charles Pitts? What is he today? Is this his 200th anniversary? Yes. Okay. Weber is 200 years old. He was a child of the early Romantic era. His opera Der Freischütz is absolutely one of the germinative forces in German nationalistic opera, which, of course, Wagner would then culminate. And it was Weber's music around 1820 which caused the furor everywhere. In Paris, in Germany, in Italy, wherever anyone went, Der Freischütz was being performed. And he also was a great pianist. Well, he had a difficult childhood. His father dragged him around from theater to theater. He was in the theater. And Weber, he picked up whenever he could the education that he would have musically. He didn't really study with a major piano teacher, but he became a foremost pianist. And he wandered around the Germanys of the early 1800s, almost as a troubadour, playing his piano music, and he had a very large hand, and his music is probably the most difficult of the time. Weber didn't write that many works because he wrote in all forms, from opera to songs, symphonies, clarinet concertos, and so forth. But each of the piano pieces was important to the romantics that followed. For instance, when Liszt in 1826, at the age of 15 or 16, first heard Weber, he knew he had found a kinship, a spiritual father. When Schumann heard Weber for the first time, it was an important moment in his life. Chopin came to Weber a little bit later, and everyone knows that Bach and Mozart were his gods, and he also loved Bellini, but Chopin abhorred most of the music of his own contemporaries. But Weber he adored. When his own student George Matthias played the A-flat Weber sonata for him, he said, "An angel passes through the sky." So Weber was the father figure, the hero to the young romantics. And we're going to hear a piece, a rondo in E-flat, a late piece, and it is, well, it has that quality of early Romanticism. It's still a classical form, but it has those piquant turns of phrases that only Weber, in the early moments of Romanticism, almost a dawning of Romanticism, could attain. Indeed, as the century grew hotter, so to speak, more sophisticated, the innocence of Weber's Romanticism is even more charming today. It used to be called old-fashioned, but now as we in the late 20th century look upon all music in a slightly different way because of recordings, there is so much now we can hear. We don't call pieces dated as we once did. We just look at them historically. So we have a work around 1820. Beethoven was alive, Schubert was alive, and he had already written his celebrated Invitation to the Dance in 1819. The actual piece just spawned the dance movement of the 19th century. The waltz craze was the most popular of all dances, probably in the history of music, and more wonderful works were inspired from the Invitation. Well, this rondo is going to be played by a pianist of the highest attainment. His name is Beveridge Webster. Webster has had a wonderful career, a long one. He has known many composers personally, from Ravel to Stravinsky. He has one of the most extraordinary repertoires I have ever known any pianist to have. If you ask Mr. Webster, did he play this or that, the chances are not only did he study it, not only did he learn it, but he played it in performance. Beveridge Webster is on the faculty of the Juilliard School, and he is one of the most important pianists that we have in America, and we're going to hear him play Weber's Rondo in E-flat. The E-flat Rondo by Carl Maria von Weber, 1786 to 1826. So Weber only lived 40 years. He had an interesting life, and he died of TB. He had a romantic kind of limp a la Lord Byron. And although he had a wonderful baritone voice in his youth, his father practiced lithography, and he drank nitric acid thinking it was a juice, and so for the rest of his life, von Weber talked impaired. It was very, very soft, and it was difficult for him to speak. He died in London, where he had conducted previously in the previous months the world premiere of his last work, the opera Oberon. And he was such an influence on Mendelssohn. We just heard the American pianist Beveridge Webster, and everything was just so solid. Such a difficult piece to play accurately. It is like Mendelssohn, very, very difficult, one note out of place, and everything can fall apart. But it's so pianistic. That's our little tribute tonight to the 200th birthday of Weber. Nobody is doing much about him. He seems to be a composer more written about or read in dictionaries about, but seldom performed. What a shame. Let's go to a composer that indeed is not neglected, but his piano music is. He wrote very little of it, and he wrote for the piano and orchestra setup a burlesque, which is once in a while heard in concert. But his piano music, the biggest of his forms, is the Opus 5 Piano Sonata, and Glenn Gould made this recording. Indeed, it was his last recording. He recorded the Opus 5 B minor sonata composed when Strauss was around 16, and then the Opus 3 piano pieces. There are 5 piano pieces, and it was Gould's last recording. And do buy this if you have a chance, because in the sonata, quite a long work, Gould transforms the piece into something of a masterwork. He takes conventional Mendelssohnian harmonic material, a few little pieces of Brahmsian tidbits thrown in, and he makes out of it something so wonderful. Let's hear one of the 5 piano pieces, Opus 3. Strauss, of course, was one of the most precocious composers of his day, and by Opus 3, at the age of 15 and 16, he had already achieved tremendous mastery. Let's listen to Glenn Gould in the first of the Klavierstücke Opus 3. It's marked Andante. That was the Andante, the first from 5 pieces that Richard Strauss wrote at the age of 16. It was Glenn Gould's last recording, these Strauss pieces and the piano sonata of Strauss. And I think that maybe I could probably tell his playing anywhere. It's Gouldian. We will be back right after this message or two. This is David Dubal, and, since this is my program, I allow myself plugs occasionally, and I'm going to be doing 5 sessions at the New School, starting September 29th with various guests. And I hope you attend. They're really going to be interesting. The single admission is $10, or you can call the New School for information. The whole series is only $35. And I'm going to have for my first guest, September 29th, the celebrated American-born pianist, Ruth Laredo, called First Lady among American pianists. And she will play a bit, and we will talk about music and what it means to be a careerist in our society. October 6th, I am going to be talking with the venerable, no, he is more than venerable, he is a glorious person, Otto Luening, whose autobiography, The Odyssey of an American Composer, is an immense trip through 20th century cultural history. And we'll be talking to Otto Luening, who is 86 years old soon. October 20th, Ned Rorem, the always controversial Pulitzer Prize-winning composer, is among the half-dozen most famous American cultural figures, and I'll be discussing issues, world issues, musical issues. We'll be hearing a little bit of Ned Rorem's music. On the 27th, I will be doing a lecture on American music, and I will be playing myself some pieces which I think are charming, from McDowell to Stephen Foster and Hewitt and Griffiths. And then on November 3rd, there's going to be a fascinating individual by the name of John Browning, an extraordinary pianist, and he was the one who gave the world premiere of the Barber Piano Concerto. So do join me, because this is going to be, I think, an interesting 5 sessions. They are Monday evenings, 5:50 to 7:35 p.m. 5, well, you can say almost 6 o'clock to 7:35, and they begin September 29th with Ruth Laredo as my guest. $35 for the entire series. Quite a wonderful deal. Single admission, $10. So thank you for letting me tell you about this. Join me. It's called Conversation with David Dubal, in case you want to write the New School or call them the New School for Social Research. And it's the fall semester. And we're going to hear a piece, Slow Movement, by an early romantic. I'll bet you think it may even be Chopin if I don't tell you who it is. I will tell you, of course. I cannot bear not knowing these things. John Field. Who was John Field? An Irishman. And he was the inventor of the nocturne. And thank goodness he did it, because Chopin then was inspired and he composed his extraordinary, exquisite 19 nocturnes. But the 18 nocturnes of Field have a naivete and a charm all of their own. Again, like Weber, a certain kind of innocent romanticism which would disappear later in the 19th century. We are going to hear the piano concerto in A-flat. I believe the soloist is Rina Kyriakou, and the orchestra I don't know right now. I'll find that out. But here is the tiny little slow movement marked poco andante. Rina Kyriakou, Greek-born pianist, I believe in Crete, playing the pianoforte part of the Field Piano Concerto in A-flat number 2, never, of course, performed in public. Why not? Why is it so restricted, our concert life? C.A. Bunty is the conductor of the Berlin Symphony Orchestra. John Field's music has totally disappeared from the concert life of the world, although Busoni once wanted to, near his death, he was going to play in London all of the nocturnes and thought that it was the greatest, highest art to be able to play a John Field piece with the perfect quality and innocence that we really heard in this performance by Kyriakou, very sweet-toned. It's a small little poco andante, and it's the middle movement of this concerto. Field wrote several piano concertos, 7 or 8, which all have interesting aspects to them, but they were superseded by the concertos of Chopin. But let's hear that again, because we don't have a chance much to hear this kind of music. In concert life, it's always the Tchaikovsky Piano Concerto, a work I adore, but I mean, will this work survive for 400 more years without any competition? Let's hear Kyriakou again in this little slow movement by John Field, Irishman, who lived most of his life in St. Petersburg, where he was considered a wonderful asset to the cultural life there in the early days, where Russian music was attaining some sort of place. Russians didn't really have their own composers, and they were importing people. He came, by the way, Field, when Clementi brought him there as a young boy of around 18 to demonstrate the Clementi pianos. Well, Field could not bear Clementi because of exploitation, and he stayed in St. Petersburg. He became quickly a fashionable teacher, considered a terrible teacher. He used to doze off in front of all of the aristocratic piano students, but they loved him, and he became, of course, the creator of the nocturne. Later, when Chopin first heard the nocturnes that were composed in 1809, the first ones, well, actually Chopin was not even born yet, he was absolutely stunned, and of course the style of the Chopin nocturne comes directly from Field. Now when Field in 1832 heard Chopin's Opus 9 nocturnes, he said, "Chopin? That's a sick-room talent." Well, perhaps he heard instantly that his own immortality would dwindle quickly. But let's now hear again that poco andante from John Field's Second Concerto in A-flat. The man conducting, his name is C.A. Bunte, B-U-N-T-E, the umlaut over the U, and he conducts Berlin Symphony. Rina Kyriakou was born in Crete, and she is the soloist in that John Field Concerto, number 2 in A-flat major. Well, let's take one more small spot before we return, and I will then play for you a Chopin Polonaise. No, not the famous one, of course. This is more obscure, these programs. You know what's the point of hearing everything over and over until we ruin them. This is David Dubal returning. Which Polonaise? Everyone is asking at home. Thousands of people, maybe millions, are now asking, which of the 18 Polonaises of Frédéric Chopin will David Dubal now play? He will play one that you do not know, and it is absolutely gorgeous. Chopin is 16 years old when he pens this piece. It's in the key of B-flat minor, a luscious key, and it has a garden of double notes in the opening. Listen to an artist from Brazil, born in 1940, second place in the Chopin Warsaw competition to Marta Ogarish, who said that he should have won. His name is Arthur Moria Lima, L-I-M-A, and it's a recording on the Book of the Month Club series. If you want to buy it, it's the Complete Polonaise, 31-7615. The middle section is not an original melody with Chopin. It is from La Gazzoladra of Rossini, and it is a farewell to his young friend, his schoolmate, boy by the name of Ludwig Kohlberg. So on the title page in the manuscript it says, Adieu Willem Kohlberg. And it's so beautifully decorative. He then afterwards goes back to the Polonaise rhythm after the trio, and you hear again the exquisite way Chopin is already handling the double notes, and it is, again, early Romanticism. We have had John Field, we have had Weber, the 200th anniversary of that great master this year, and we have this Chopin Polonaise from the 16th year of the Polish Eagle. How can a 16-year-old composer living in Warsaw in the year 1826 create such nostalgia? How would he even know about nostalgia? The B-flat minor Polonaise of the great Chopin. Piece totally unknown. Why is it unknown? Because we are used to hearing 3 or 4 Polonaises. By the way, the artist who plays that with such, well, the word flair is wrong, feeling for the idiom, feeling for the slight, beautiful, decorative quality which would explode in the next few years in Chopin's art. The artist from Brazil is named Arthur Moria Lima. Every time I ever put on WNCN a Lima recording, calls come in. I wonder why. The reason, I suppose, is that he touches one with his playing. He's a poet. Well, we have just heard Chopin. Let us hear another work that has, I would say, dropped from the repertory. In the 19th century it was once played, at least the prelude. We're going to hear a pianist I admire immensely. His name is Shura Tchaikovsky. He lives in London. He's a fascinating man. He was born in 1912 in Odessa, that fabled city of violinists and pianists. Mendelssohn was born in 1809. I always know that because Abraham Lincoln was born in 1809. I don't know why the two have stuck together, but they have. What could Lincoln possibly have to do with Mendelssohn? You know, Abraham Lincoln did not like music that much. The Prelude and Fugue in E minor is the best of a whole series of preludes and fugues that Mendelssohn composed. And let us hear on a Nimbus recording, 45 RPM, the Prelude and Fugue in the key that Mendelssohn adores. Remember, his violin concerto is in E minor, as this is. Let's hear Tchaikovsky. the Opus 35 of Felix Mendelssohn, the Prelude and Fugue in E minor, in the hands of Shura Cherkassky. Before we conclude with Bach Invention, I want to invite you to the New School for Social Research. It's at 66th West 12th, New York, New York 10011. And what I would like to invite you to do is to come to course A0171, which is called Conversations with David Dubal. There are 5 sessions, and they begin September 29th. My guest is Ruth Laredo, a wonderful pianist and very articulate woman, and she'll be talking about her career. October 6th is the legendary Otto Luning. October 20th, Ned Rorem, always a controversial person. He's the one who walked on his head during the Dick Cavett show. Oh, he will be mad at me for saying that. Well, he won the Pulitzer Prize for one of his works, and Ned has also written the brilliant Paris and New York Diaries, and he'll be my guest. And on the 27th, I myself will play some American music and talk about American 19th century piano music and history. And on the 27th, the brilliant American pianist John Browning will be my guest, and we'll be discussing various things. Single admission is $10, and it starts Mondays, the 29th of September, and it goes till November 3rd. And let me see, what else can I tell you? I just would love you to be there. $35 only for the whole sets of 5 lectures. And what can I say except thank you for listening to me in this plug for myself and my guests and the New School, which is, well, call them if you need more information. Now let's hear Wanda Landowska play on the harpsichord the celebrated C major invention of Bach, a piece so many of us have played. And then we're going to hear right after it a piano version with Glenn Gould. The celebrated first invention by Bach, first in the hands of Wanda Landowska, and then in the hands of Glenn Gould. Both of them, 2 of the great keyboard personalities of the 20th century. Engineer Charles Pitts was listening to this with me, and he said something that I agree with. The thrust of their performance, their interpretation is the same, although, of course, the sound is entirely different, the harpsichord to the piano. Well, thank you for listening to these pieces, many of them really not very well known, such as the Weber or the Chopin Polonaise or the Mendelssohn, and we'll continue this adventure in listening to pieces outside of the small performing repertoire that has been the mainspring of the performing art of piano playing. There's more to Beethoven than the Appassionata, and that may be the motto for this program. There's other concertos than the Tchaikovsky First. There's even the Tchaikovsky Second, which I love, and the Tchaikovsky Third, which I play. Well, this is David Dubal. Thank you for listening.